I hate to be the guy that doesn't want to join the Cuba love fest here, but I need to associate my remarks with Mr. Claver-Carone. And in that, I'm probably not going to talk about trade here. I got a couple statements to make, and I know you're all interested in making money, and that's great, so am I. From General James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, last month. The threat from foreign intelligence entities is persistent, complex, and evolving. Targeting and collection of U.S. political, military, economic, and technical information by foreign intelligence services continues unabated. Russia and China pose the greatest threat, followed by Iran and Cuba. And to just remind you that something you all know, they're about 100 miles off the coast of Florida, right? 2 weeks prior, the U.S. Military Southern Command held its annual Caribbean Regional Security Conference. Senior members of Castro's KGB-trained spy agency were invited to participate. I find that particularly irritating and self-destructive as a person who has served decades now in the United States military. I also want to remind you of the listening posts, the largest ones in the world, based at Lourdes, which is sponsored by Russia and reopened after we brought Cuba to their knees financially, and the Soviet Union as well, and forced them to close it at some point, but reopened, and the one by China at Baikal. I would also like to remind you that this is from the Cuban, the state-sponsored newspaper. Cuba's communist propaganda newspaper, Granma, has published an article claiming that President Obama's scheduled visit to Havana in March dispels decades of evidence that the Cuban government violates the human rights of its citizens on the very weekend in which Cuban state police arrested almost 200 dissidents for peaceful marches against communism. And I'd further like to remind you of recent arrest of U.S. State Department official and his wife for over 30 years of spying at the State Department, named Walter and Gwen Myers, as well as Anna Montez, who worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency as a United States citizen, as a Cuban spy. While you all might like to dance with the devil to make a couple bucks, you can be, and with all due respect to Dr. Feinberg, when you said they prefer the socialist model, I will remind you, as you probably well know, that socialism is an economic construct. Communism is the political construct that forces the economic construct. These folks in power have no interest at all in changing their ways, and they are going to use us and our foolishness, our generosity, to further their intentions. And while you all might be happy that we have a socialist running for the presidency of the United States, I find it particularly vexing that American service members spent and pledged their lives and often gave their lives in the fight against exactly that. And now we're saying yet again, it's great to engage with these folks in the hope that they will change after 40 or 50 years. I don't know what delusion you folks are under, but listen, if you're under one, that's great. But do me this favor, and I would hope that the president would do us this favor as well, which is, if you're going to make a deal, when a deal's been made, let's find out what we're getting up front, as opposed to giving everything away and then hoping that we'll get something on the other side. And so with that, I will ask one question only. Anybody can answer it, everybody can answer it. What did we get? Specifically, tangibly, what did we get for the deal that we just made?
I'm happy to take a first response to that. Thank you, Congressman, for your question. I think first of all, I think I'm not trying to dance with the devil to make a few bucks here, right? I'm the director of the Latin American Growth Initiative at a nonpartisan think tank here. I have no skin in the game insofar as cash on this, but I think what we have to look at insofar as what is the best way to seek greater political and economic liberties for the Cuban people. I think that's.
I'm with you. Economic is one of the powers that we have, but I wonder what we're getting, what we have gotten for the deal.
Yeah.
We already gave, right? So what did we get?
Yeah.
Not what we hope to get.
Yeah. I would say there's a few things that well, first of all, I think there's a few things that we've gotten from the actions of the last 15 months. One is that on a geostrategic perspective, We've increased the power, the positioning of the United States and our perception among our allies, not just across the hemisphere, countries that are incredibly important for us to work with. Our policy toward Cuba has been the thorn in our side insofar as seeking greater relationships across Latin America and countering other regimes that I think that we would be in agreement with, that we also want to see, that are also restricting the ability of their people to express their political liberties, including that regime in Caracas, Venezuela.
If I may ask, and with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, which Latin American countries have we increased our stance with via our position with Cuba now? Which Latin American countries?
I would say we've increased our stance with Brazil, with Argentina, with Colombia, with probably Mexico as well. I would say most countries in their hemisphere had gotten to the point that they could no longer defend our policy. Now, insofar as what does that mean for the Castros, right? Our policy should not be one that keeps the Castros in power. Our policy should be one that seeks to provide greater liberties for the Cuban people. And I would contend that over the last 5+ decades, our embargo has been the crutch and the answer for the Castro regime of why the country is continuously suffering from economic ills. Whenever there's a problem in Cuba, the answer is it's because of the embargo. Now, obviously, the embargo still remains in place, but by chipping away at some of the restrictions in our policy, we're taking away bit by bit the reasons in which the Castro regime can blame others from the outside, specifically the imperialists from the United States, for the economic problems that they have in their own country.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.